Hold on to your seats, folks, because what I'm about to tell you isn't for the faint of heart. This isn't your grandma's bedtime story. This is a raw, unvarnished look into the twisted depths of family betrayal, a tale so shocking, so utterly unbelievable, it's going to grab you by the throat and not let go until the very last word. And trust me, you won't want it to. So before we dive headfirst into this abyss of deceit, do yourselves a favor. Smash that subscribe button, hit the like, and tell us in the comments where you're bracing yourself for impact. Because once you're in, there's no turning back. Dad, do you even understand that I need the money now, not after you die? The words, laced with venom and a chilling sense of entitlement, were barely out of her mouth before the antique porcelain coffee cup, a cherished wedding gift, exploded against the hard oak floor. Brown liquid, a dark, bitter premonition, splattered across the delicate floral patterns of our inherited Persian rug. Eleanor's face, usually a mask of carefully constructed charm, was a fiery crimson, her perfectly manicured fingers trembling with an uncontrolled rage that sent shivers down my spine. My grip on the inheritance documents, the meticulously planned future now reduced to a weapon in my own daughter's desperate hands, tightened until the crisp paper crinkled under my white-knuckled fist. 30 years. 30 years of careful planning, prudent investments, and countless sacrifices, all for her, all to ensure her future security, her comfort, her happiness. And now, this. Eleanor, I began, my voice a strained whisper against the ringing in my ears. I am not an ATM. You will receive your inheritance when the time comes, as we've always discussed. My son-in-law, Mark, sprawled in our plush leather armchair, a smug, almost predatory smirk twisting his lips. Come on, Arthur. She's your only daughter. What's a few thousand to help us out? A few thousand? The sheer audacity, the blatant lack of shame curdled in my stomach. Last month, it was his unforeseen business investment. Gambling debts, as I later discovered. Before that, Eleanor's insatiable shopping sprees, a bottomless pit of designer labels and fleeting trends. The requests were a relentless tide, each wave bolder, more demanding than the last. Help you out? I rose slowly, my 68-year-old joints protesting with a familiar ache, an echo of the countless hours I'd toiled for them. I've helped you out for 3 years running. My retirement fund is not your personal piggy bank. Just then, my wife, Clara, materialized in the doorway, a dish towel twisted nervously in her hands, her face etched with that familiar, weary plea. Please, everyone, just calm down. We can talk about this reasonably. Reasonably? Eleanor whirled on her mother, her voice a shrill shriek that clawed at my eardrums. He's sitting on hundreds of thousands while we're drowning in debt. Debt you created, I stated, my voice dangerously quiet, each word a stone dropped into a bottomless well. Debt from your choices. My gaze drifted to the mantelpiece, where our cherished family photo, a smiling portrait from happier times, lay face down. Had it fallen during Eleanor's latest tantrum, or had someone, in a fit of pique, deliberately turned it away? The silver frame, a cruel mirror, reflected only the harsh, empty brightness of the overhead light, a stark metaphor for the void in our family. Mark shifted forward, elbows resting on his knees, his eyes, cold and calculating, fixed on me. Look, old man, you're not getting any younger. Why not enjoy sharing your wealth while you're alive to see it appreciated? Old man. The disrespect, sharp and acrid, burned in my throat. This, from a man who had never held a steady job, who lived off my daughter's credit cards and my occasional begrudging generosity. Because I worked 45 years for that money, I articulated, each word a hammer blow, harder than the last. 45 years of 12-hour days, missed dinners, canceled vacations. So you could have a comfortable childhood, Eleanor. So your mother and I could retire with dignity. Dignity. Eleanor's laugh was a harsh, brittle sound, like glass shattering. What's dignified about hoarding money while your daughter suffers? Suffers? My eyes swept over her designer handbag. A recent purchase I was sure I'd indirectly funded. Her freshly highlighted hair, the expensive, glittering jewelry adorning her wrists and neck, Mark's brand new, ostentatiously branded sneakers. Their suffering looked remarkably comfortable. Your suffering is self-inflicted. The words escaped before I could rein them in, a dam breaking under years of pressure. Every crisis, every emergency, every desperate plea for money, you created them all. The silence that followed was taut, stretched tight as a piano wire, threatening to snap. Clara moved fully into the room, her face ashen, her voice a barely audible whisper. Arthur, maybe we should... Should what? Eleanor's voice cracked like a whip. Should keep enabling your selfishness? Should keep pretending you're a loving father instead of a greedy miser? The accusations, cruel and undeserved, struck me like physical blows. Greedy, selfish, unloving. 45 years of unwavering sacrifice, and this was my reward. Mark rose, his expression hardening into something truly ugly. You know what I think, Arthur? I think you enjoy watching us struggle. Makes you feel powerful, doesn't it? Get out! The words, guttural and raw, tore from somewhere deep within my chest. Both of you, get out of my house. Your house? Eleanor's eyes glittered with dangerous fury. This house that Mom helped to pay for? This house where I grew up? You can't just kick out your own daughter? Watch me. But she didn't move. Neither did Mark. They stood there, two predators who had caught the scent of weakness, waiting for me to back down, waiting for the usual apology, the usual compromise, the usual check written to buy temporary fleeting peace. Not this time. I walked to the front door and opened it wide, letting the cool evening air rush in, carrying the sweet scent of honeysuckle and the distant, normal sounds of neighbors' laughter. Normal families, having normal conversations. How long had it been since we'd laughed together? Eleanor, I said, without turning around, my voice devoid of emotion. Take your husband and leave. Don't come back until you're ready to have a respectful conversation about your financial problems and your solutions that don't involve my wallet. You'll regret this, she hissed, grabbing her designer purse, the leather strap biting into her shoulder. When you're old and sick and need someone to take care of you, remember this moment. Remember how you chose money over family. Her heels clicked across the hardwood like gunshots, each step a declaration of war. Mark followed, pausing at the threshold, his parting words a low growl. This isn't over, old man. Family doesn't abandon family. The door slammed shut with a force that rattled the windows, leaving a silence that felt heavier, more oppressive than their shouting had been. I stood frozen at the front door, my hand still gripping the cold brass handle, staring through the decorative glass panels. I watched Eleanor's luxury SUV reverse aggressively out of our driveway, tires squealing on the asphalt, a final defiant roar. Clara's soft footsteps approached from behind. Arthur? I turned slowly. The living room, usually a haven of peace, now looked like a battlefield. Coffee stains darkened the Persian rug we'd bought for our 20th anniversary. Inheritance documents lay scattered across the hardwood floor like fallen leaves, discarded promises. The overturned family photo, a cruel mockery of happier times, caught the lamplight, its silver frame winking mockingly. 45 years, I whispered, more to myself than to her, the weight of the words pressing down on me. What? Clara's voice was soft, fragile. 45 years, I repeated, the memories flooding back, each one a fresh wound. 45 years I worked overtime shifts during her high school years, so she could have new clothes, college textbooks, That car for her 16th birthday. My voice hitched, a raw, ragged sound. The wedding we couldn't afford, but paid for anyway. Clara began to meticulously pick up the scattered papers, her movements careful, deliberate, as if handling fragile glass. She's struggling, Arthur. The gambling problem is her choice. The words came out sharper than I intended, laced with a bitterness I hadn't known I possessed. Every casino visit, every online bet, every lie about where the money went, her choices. I walked to the mantelpiece and righted the family photo. 5-year-old Eleanor smiled back at me, gap-toothed and innocent, perched on my shoulders at the county fair. When had that joyful child become this manipulative stranger, demanding my life savings? Remember when she wanted that dollhouse for Christmas? I asked, my fingers tracing the cold glass, a phantom touch of a forgotten dream. The one from the expensive toy store downtown? I worked double shifts for 2 months to afford it. Clara's silence was answer enough. We both remembered. Just like we remembered the ballet lessons, the summer camps, the brand new shoes because all her friends had them, every sacrifice, made gladly for our daughter's happiness. And now, she throws coffee mugs at me because I won't hand over my retirement fund. She didn't throw it at you, Arthur. She threw it at the floor. The distinction felt meaningless. The violence was the same, whether aimed at me or my possessions. The disrespect, identical. I bent down and picked up one of the inheritance documents. The legal language blurred as I read it, but I knew every clause by heart. Years of careful planning, conservative investments, delayed gratification. Also, Eleanor would be financially secure after we were gone. Mark's influence, Clara said quietly, her voice barely a whisper. He fills her head with these ideas about what we owe her. Mark didn't create her greed, Clara. He just gave it permission to show itself. The harsh truth hung between us, a suffocating presence. Our daughter had become someone we barely recognized, and we'd enabled it. By always giving in, always writing the check, always smoothing over her latest crisis with our money. My phone buzzed, a text message from an unknown number. But I recognized the writing style immediately. Dad, I hope you're happy. The kids need winter coats and school supplies, but apparently your precious money is more important than your grandchildren. Don't expect to see them anytime soon. Grandchildren. The ultimate weapon in Eleanor's arsenal. Lily and Leo, 8 and 6 years old. Innocent casualties in their mother's relentless war for my wallet. She knew exactly where to strike to cause maximum pain. I showed Clara the message. Her face crumpled. She wouldn't really keep them away from us, would she? But we both knew she would. She'd done it before, during smaller arguments. A week here, 2 weeks there, whenever we didn't immediately comply with her financial demands. The children, used as bargaining chips in her endless quest for money. Arthur, maybe we should reconsider. No. The word came out like a gunshot, echoing in the quiet room. No more. I won't be held hostage by threats about the grandchildren. I won't teach Lily and Leo that love can be bought, that family relationships are mere transactions. Clara flinched at my vehemence. In 40 years of marriage, she'd rarely seen me this angry. Even during our worst arguments, I'd never spoken with such cold finality. But something had shifted tonight. Some fundamental understanding about my daughter, about our relationship, about the future I'd imagined for our family. The illusion of loving sacrifice had shattered as completely as that coffee mug. My phone buzzed again. 6 days later. I sat on our front porch with the Sunday paper, a desperate attempt to cling to some semblance of normalcy on this Father's Day morning. The coffee had grown cold in my mug, but I held on to it anyway, watching neighbors emerge for their weekend activities. The Millers were loading their car for what looked like a family outing to the lake. The Davises were working in their garden, their easy laughter drifting across the quiet suburban street. Inside, Clara moved around the kitchen, the soft clatter of breakfast dishes a familiar, comforting sound through the open window. We'd spent the week in careful conversation, dancing around the Eleanor-shaped hole in our family dynamic. Neither of us had heard from her since that night. No calls, no texts, no surprise visits demanding money or reconciliation. The silence felt unnatural, almost sinister. In 3 years of relentless financial crises, Eleanor had never gone this long without contact. Usually by day 3, she'd be calling with apologies and smaller requests, testing the waters before launching into her next major plea for money. But this was different. The completeness of the silence felt deliberate, calculated, almost like the calm before a storm. Part of me, a small, weary part, felt relieved. The larger part, however, worried. The rumble of a delivery truck broke through my thoughts. I looked up from the sports section to see a brown express post vehicle slowing in front of our house. Strange. We weren't expecting anything, and Sunday deliveries were rare, reserved for those willing to pay extra for weekend service. The driver hopped out, consulted his handheld device, then grabbed a medium-sized box from the back. He approached with the practiced, almost robotic efficiency of someone working holiday overtime. "Arthur Maxwell? That's me." "Happy Father's Day," he said, offering the package and an electronic clipboard. "Someone must think highly of you to pay for Sunday delivery." I signed my name, my eyes scanning the shipping label as he walked away. No return address visible, just generic shipping information. The box felt surprisingly light for its size, roughly the dimensions of a shoebox, but weighing maybe 2 pounds at most. "Who's that from?" Clara called from the kitchen doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "No idea." I carried the package inside, setting it on the coffee table where the inheritance documents had scattered just 6 days earlier. "No return address?" she asked, approaching, her expression a mix of curiosity and caution. Clara had always been more suspicious of unexpected deliveries than I was. Too many years of hearing about package bombs and mail fraud on the evening news. "Maybe it's from the grandchildren," she suggested, but her tone lacked conviction. Lily did ask about Father's Day when we saw them last month, before Eleanor had weaponized them against us, before the threats and ultimatums. I pushed those thoughts away. "Could be," I agreed, though something felt off. The timing seemed too convenient, too calculated, and Lily, as much as she loved me, wouldn't have paid for special Sunday delivery. Clara leaned closer, examining the box with the methodical attention she brought to everything from grocery shopping to crossword puzzles. Her fingers traced the edges of the shipping label. "Arthur," she said slowly, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Don't open it." "Why?" She pointed to something I'd missed entirely in my casual handling. "Can't you see the holes? They're for breathing, which means something alive is inside." My stomach dropped. Now that she'd pointed them out, I could see tiny punctures in the cardboard, barely visible unless you knew to look. Small, precise holes that someone had clearly made on purpose. "Breathing holes," I repeated, my voice flat, devoid of all emotion. "Something's alive in there," Clara confirmed, backing away from the coffee table, her eyes wide with dawning horror. "The question is, what?" We stood there in our living room, staring at the innocent-looking package as if it might suddenly sprout legs and run away. The morning sunlight streaming through our windows seemed less warm now. The suburban quiet more ominous, charged with an unseen menace. "Who would send us something alive?" Clara whispered, her voice barely a breath. But even as she asked the question, I felt a cold certainty settling in my chest, a dawning, terrible realization. The timing, the anonymous sender, The Sunday delivery that ensured we'd be home and unsuspecting. This wasn't a gift. This was something else entirely. Something malevolent. From inside the box came the faintest sound, a soft rustling that made us both freeze, our breath catching in our throats. The sound stopped as quickly as it had started, leaving us in an unbearable, intense silence. Clara grabbed my arm, her fingernails digging into my skin through the cotton of my polo shirt. "Did you hear that?" she breathed, her eyes wide with terror. I nodded, unable to trust my voice. Whatever was in that box was very much alive, and it was waking up. A soft hissing sound emerged from the cardboard, barely audible, but unmistakably real. We both froze, staring at the package as if it might explode at any moment. The sound stopped. Silence stretched between us like a held breath. Then it came again, longer this time. A distinct, unmistakable hiss that sent ice through my veins. Clara's grip on my arm tightened until her nails bit through the fabric of my shirt. "Arthur," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. "Call someone, now." My hands shook as I pulled out my phone, muscle memory taking over while my mind struggled to process the terrifying reality we were facing. The numbers felt foreign under my trembling fingers. 911. What's your emergency? We have a suspicious package here. The words tumbled out faster than I intended, with something alive inside. It was delivered this morning with no return address, and it's making sounds. Sir, can you describe the sounds you're hearing? I glanced at Clara, who nodded encouragingly. The hissing had stopped again, but we both knew it would return. Hissing, I said, like... I couldn't finish the sentence. Like a snake. The thought felt too dangerous to voice aloud, too real. Are there any visible threats or damage to the package? No visible damage, no. But there are small holes punched in the cardboard. Breathing holes. My voice cracked on the last words. Sir, I am dispatching officers to your location immediately. Please maintain a safe distance from the package and do not attempt to open it. Can you move to another room? We're about 6 feet away in our living room. Should we leave the house? Stay inside, but keep your distance. Officers should arrive within 10 minutes. Do not touch or move the package under any circumstances. The line went quiet, except for the dispatcher's rapid typing. 10 minutes felt like an eternity when something dangerous was sitting on our coffee table, growing more active with each passing moment. Who could have done this, Arthur? Clara asked once I'd hung up, her voice trembling. The question I'd been dreading. The answer felt obvious, an undeniable truth, but saying it out loud would make it real. It would acknowledge that our daughter had crossed a line I'd never imagined possible. I'm afraid to guess, I admitted, but my mind was already there, connecting dots I didn't want to see. The timing on Father's Day wasn't coincidental. The anonymous sender who knew our address, our schedules, our vulnerabilities. Someone angry enough about our recent argument to plan something this elaborate, this cruel. Another sound from the box made us both step backward, not just hissing this time, but a rustling that suggested movement, something shifting position inside the confined space. The argument, Clara said quietly, her voice barely a whisper. 6 days ago. She was so angry when she left. She didn't need to say Eleanor's name. We were both thinking it, both arriving at the same horrible conclusion through different paths of logic and dread. But this, I gestured at the package, a symbol of chilling malice. This isn't anger, this is something else. Revenge. The word hung unspoken between us, too ugly to voice but impossible to ignore. Our daughter, the child we'd raised and supported and loved despite her flaws, had sent us something designed to frighten or harm us. The box rustled again, more insistently this time. Whatever was inside was definitely awake now, probably confused by its surroundings, possibly agitated by our voices and movement. What kind of person does this to their own parents? Clara's voice broke on the question, a raw cry of disbelief. Someone desperate, I said, though the words felt inadequate, hollow. Someone who thinks they've been wronged. But deep down, I knew it was more than desperation. This required planning, calculation, a level of malice that spoke to something broken, fundamentally twisted, in the relationship between parent and child. Eleanor hadn't just lashed out in anger. She'd crafted a deliberate act of psychological warfare. The sound of car doors slamming outside made us both jump. Through the front window, I could see a police cruiser in our driveway, its lights flashing silently. 2 officers walking toward our door with the purposeful stride of people trained to handle dangerous situations. Relief flooded through me so quickly it made my knees weak. Professional help had arrived. Soon, whatever nightmare lurked in that innocent-looking package would be someone else's responsibility to handle safely. The doorbell rang, sharp and authoritative, cutting through the tense quiet of our home. I opened the door before Officer Thompson could knock a second time. His presence filled the doorframe, tall, solidly built, with the practiced alertness of someone who'd handled countless domestic emergencies. The nameplate on his uniform read, T. Thompson. Mr. Maxwell, I'm Officer Thompson. We received your call about a suspicious package. Yes, thank you for coming so quickly. I stepped aside to let him enter. It's in the living room. He wiped his boots meticulously on our welcome mat before crossing the threshold. Clara appeared in the hallway, still wearing her apron, her hands twisted nervously. Officer, we're just so grateful you're here. We didn't know what else to do. You did exactly the right thing, ma'am. His voice carried a calm, reassuring authority. Can you show me the package? We led him to the living room, where the box sat on our coffee table, looking smaller, somehow less threatening, now that professional help had arrived. Officer Thompson approached carefully, pulling latex gloves from his utility belt. When did this arrive? About 35 minutes ago, I said. Sunday delivery. Someone paid extra for weekend service. He examined the shipping label without touching the box. No return address visible. And you heard sounds coming from inside? Hissing, Clara said quietly. Like... She couldn't finish. Like a snake, Officer Thompson completed matter-of-factly. I've handled similar situations before. Usually non-venomous, but we take every precaution. He reached for his radio. I'm calling animal control. They have proper equipment for safe removal. Dispatch, this is Unit 37 requesting animal control services at 14222 Elmwood Drive. Suspected snake delivery in residential package. The radio crackled back with confirmation. 20 minutes for animal control to respond. Officer Thompson turned back to us, shifting from procedural efficiency to investigative curiosity. Do you have any idea who might have sent this? The question I'd been dreading. I felt Clara's eyes on me, waiting to see how I'd respond. I don't know, I said carefully. Probably just some kids playing pranks. His gaze sharpened slightly. Kids would need access to live animals, shipping materials, knowledge of your address. This required planning and resources, Mr. Maxwell. My mouth went dry. He was right. Someone with means and motive had deliberately sent us a snake on Father's Day. Have you had any recent conflicts, family disagreements? Family disagreements? The phrase hung in the air like an accusation. Clara tensed beside me, both of us walking the tightrope between honesty and loyalty. Nothing that would lead to this, I managed, my voice strained. Officer Thompson studied my face, noting the hesitation, but he didn't push. Instead, he pulled out a small notebook. Any unusual charges on your credit cards recently? Pet stores? Exotic animal suppliers? The question hit me like a physical blow. Pet stores. The memory crashed over me with terrible clarity, that charge I'd noticed on last month's statement. Eleanor used my credit card for emergencies. Reptile Haven, $150. I'd assumed it was something for the grandchildren. Not a snake. Never a snake. Mr. Maxwell, are you all right? I forced my expression back to neutral, though my heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I'm fine, just processing all this. But I wasn't fine. The puzzle pieces were falling into place with horrifying clarity. The timing, the knowledge of our routines, the access to my credit card, the deliberate cruelty of choosing Father's Day. My daughter had sent me a snake. Will you be filing a formal report? Officer Thompson asked. We can investigate the package origin, pursue charges if we identify the sender. I looked at Clara, saw the same conflict behind her eyes. Part of me wanted justice, a burning desire for retribution. But the larger part, the part that had spent 40 years protecting Eleanor despite her flaws, couldn't bring myself to turn her over to the police. No, I said quietly, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill. If it's just a prank, filing charges seems excessive. Officer Thompson made a note, though his expression suggested he'd heard this response before. Family loyalty trumping justice, even when family members crossed dangerous lines. Another vehicle pulled into our driveway. Through the window, I could see a white van with Animal Control Services painted on the side. That'll be Dave Miller, Officer Thompson said. Best wildlife specialist in the county. He'll have this resolved safely within the hour. But as I watched the animal control officer grab his equipment, I knew the real situation was just beginning. Dave Miller from Animal Control worked with the methodical efficiency of someone who'd handled stranger situations than ours. Within 20 minutes, he'd safely extracted a 3-foot corn snake from the shipping box, confirmed it was non-venomous, and loaded it into a secure carrier for transport to a local reptile rescue. Beautiful specimen, he said, securing the carrier in his van. Someone paid good money for this one. Corn snakes make excellent pets when properly cared for. Shame someone used it for whatever this was. Officer Thompson shook hands with both of us before departing. Call if you remember anything else about possible senders, Mr. Maxwell. Even pranks like this can escalate if left unchecked. I nodded, maintaining the facade of cooperation, while my mind churned with darker possibilities. Both vehicles disappeared down our quiet suburban street, leaving Clara and me alone with the morning's aftermath. The living room felt different now, violated somehow, despite the professional cleanup. The coffee table bore faint water stains where Dave had disinfected the surface. The scattered inheritance documents had been restacked neatly, but their symbolic power had shifted. They were no longer tools of family planning, but evidence of the betrayal that had triggered this morning's events. Clara busied herself in the kitchen, running water in the sink with unnecessary vigor, stress cleaning, her standard response to family crises. I stood at the front window, watching the Millers return from their Father's Day outing, their car loaded with picnic gear and children's laughter. Normal families, normal Sunday mornings, normal fathers who didn't receive venomous surprises from their daughters. The credit card charge burned in my memory like a brand. Reptile Haven, $127.50. 3 weeks ago, right after our argument about the inheritance. Perfect timing for planning revenge. My phone felt heavy in my hands as I scrolled to Eleanor's contact information. Her smiling photo looked back at me, a picture from Lily's birthday party last year, before the financial demands had escalated, before the threats about grandchildren access, before this morning's snake delivery. Are you really going to call her? Clara asked quietly from the kitchen doorway. I need to know for certain. And if she admits it? The question hung between us like a challenge. What would I do if my suspicions were confirmed? What action could a father take against a daughter who'd crossed such a fundamental line? I didn't have an answer yet, but I knew the conversation was necessary. The phone rang twice before she picked up. Dad? Eleanor's voice carried an artificial brightness, the tone she used when she wanted something or was hiding something. How's your Father's Day going? My grip tightened on the phone. How's my Father's Day going? If she was innocent, the question was natural. If she was guilty, it was cruel mockery. Interesting morning, actually. I kept my voice neutral, conversational. Eleanor, you wouldn't happen to know anything about a strange Father's Day gift? No, Dad. What happened? Her response came quickly, almost too quickly, but it was what happened next that confirmed my worst suspicions. In the background, unmistakably, I heard Mark's quiet laughter. Not the surprised chuckle of someone hearing unexpected news, but the satisfied snicker of someone who thought they'd gotten away with something clever. The sound hit me like a physical blow. All doubt vanished in that moment of careless amusement. My daughter had sent me a snake, and her husband found it entertaining. Just some confusion with the delivery, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. Nothing important. I should let you go. Are you sure everything's okay? You sound strange. Strange? I was discovering that my only daughter had tried to terrorize me with a live reptile, and she thought I sounded strange. Everything's fine, Eleanor. Enjoy your Sunday. I ended the call before she could respond, before my carefully maintained composure could crack completely. The phone trembled in my hands as the full weight of betrayal settled over me. Clara appeared at my side, reading my face with the intuition of 40 years of marriage. You heard something? Mark laughed. The words came out flat, emotionless. In the background, when she asked what happened, he laughed like it was the funniest joke he'd ever heard. Her hand found my arm, a steadying presence in the shifting landscape of our family dynamics. What are you going to do? I looked down at the phone, then toward my home office, where the computer held access to bank accounts, credit cards, and all the financial tools that had kept Eleanor afloat for 3 years running. I'm going to teach my daughter about consequences. 7 o'clock found me sitting in my home office, door closed, the computer humming quietly in the evening stillness. I'd spent the afternoon in careful thought, walking through our neighborhood, reviewing 40 years of financial decisions that had brought us to this moment. The anger had settled into something colder, more purposeful. My desk held the accumulated evidence of a father's generosity. Bank statements showing monthly transfers to cover Eleanor's rent, credit card bills I'd paid without question, insurance premiums, car payments, emergency loans that were never repaid, 4 decades of enabling disguised as love. The leather portfolio beside my keyboard contained documents I'd reviewed dozens of times, copies of checks written for her wedding, receipts from the car I'd sold to pay her gambling debts, bank transfers labeled emergency assistance that had become monthly obligations. Each piece of paper told the same story of a daughter who had learned to see her father as an endless source of money rather than guidance. The computer screen glowed as I navigated to our online banking portal. My fingers moved steadily across the keyboard, typing the familiar passwords I'd never shared with Eleanor, though she'd managed to access plenty without them. First, the credit card account, the same one that showed the Reptile Haven charge from 3 weeks ago. Eleanor appeared as an authorized user, a status I'd granted her during college for emergencies, 20-year-old emergencies that had multiplied into a permanent lifestyle. I clicked on Manage Users. The system prompted me with security questions, my mother's maiden name, the street where I grew up. Simple answers that unlocked access to tools I should have used years ago. "Remove authorized user?" the screen asked in neutral blue text. My cursor hovered over confirm for perhaps 10 seconds, not from hesitation, but from the profound shift I felt occurring within myself. 4 decades I've funded your irresponsibility. Enough. I clicked. User access revoked. Changes will take effect within 1 business hour. Next came the PIN changes. Eleanor had somehow learned the numbers, probably watching over my shoulder during one of our many financial rescue missions. I selected new digits, the year Clara and I were married. Numbers that meant something to our relationship, but nothing to my daughter's schemes. The automated payments required more attention. Monthly transfers to her checking account, the recurring payment for her car insurance, a subscription service for her gym membership that she'd convinced me was essential for her mental health. Each cancellation required confirmation, a digital paper trail of my decision to stop being her private bank. My hands remained steady throughout the process. No trembling, no hesitation. This wasn't cruelty. It was overdue accountability. I remembered the conversation last month when she'd called, sobbing about the gambling debts, how she'd promised this was the last time, the final crisis I'd need to solve. I'd believed her, transferred another $5,000, and told Clara we were helping our daughter learn responsibility. Instead, I'd been teaching her that consequences were optional. The final screen showed a summary of changes. Credit access removed, automatic payments canceled, PIN codes updated, the work of 4 decades of enabling undone in 30 minutes of methodical clicking. Save changes. Outside my office window, the suburban evening continued its peaceful rhythm. The Millers were grilling dinner in their backyard. Mrs. Davis walked her small dog past our mailbox. Normal families living normal lives, probably not dealing with adult children who sent live snakes as Father's Day gifts. I clicked Save. The confirmation appeared instantly. Account changes processed. Updated information will be available immediately. Leaning back in my leather desk chair, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years when it came to Eleanor. Control. Not the desperate, reactive scrambling to fix her latest crisis, but the calm authority of a parent who'd finally remembered that love sometimes requires saying no. Tomorrow morning, she would discover that her financial safety net had been removed. Her credit card would be declined. Her automatic payments would bounce. Her assumed access to my resources would simply end. For the first time in decades, the consequences of her choices would be entirely her own responsibility. The phone on my desk remained silent, but I knew that wouldn't last long. Morning arrived with unusual peace. I sat at our kitchen table with coffee and the newspaper, watching sunlight filter through Clara's herb garden on the windowsill. For the first time in years, I felt no anxiety about potential financial emergencies, no dread of manipulative phone calls. Clara moved quietly around the kitchen, refilling my coffee cup with the comfortable efficiency of 40 years of shared mornings. She'd asked no questions about my evening in the office, but her slight smile suggested she understood perfectly what I'd accomplished. The phone rang at 8:15. Eleanor's name appeared on the caller ID, exactly as expected. I let it ring twice more before answering, using those extra seconds to center myself. "Good morning, Eleanor." "Dad, what have you done? My card isn't working." Her voice hit me like a physical assault, shrill with panic. "I tried to buy groceries and it was declined." The automatic payment for my car insurance bounced. "What is happening?" I took a sip of coffee before responding. "Eleanor, I know you sent me that Father's Day gift." The silence stretched for several heartbeats, thick with unspoken dread. When she spoke again, her voice had shifted from panic to defensive fury. "You've lost your mind. How could you set me up like this?" Set her up? Not, "What are you talking about?" or "What Father's Day gift?" The woman who had sent me a snake was now accusing me of setting traps. Her reaction told me everything I needed to know. "I didn't do anything," I said calmly. "I simply stopped paying for your irresponsibility." "This is insane. You can't just cut me off without warning. I have bills, obligations, responsibilities."